Hello fellow YouTubers, it's me Tom Versal here, and welcome back to the Music Corner. If I seem a bit different today, it's because I just filmed 16 minutes of this video for my phone to run out of memory, and I'm fine, I'll finish the video, but just do it some other way. No, every time it runs out of memory during a video, it deletes the fucking video, and it's just so annoying. Why does it do that? Why do phones do that? Keep the video. I don't care if I've got no memory left. Keep the video. I'll figure something out. So this is take 2. Technically 3, but I'm not classing take 1. Sorry for that little rant. It's just really annoying. Anyway, today I'm going to be kickstarting a new series. Basically, this series is going to be called Evolution or Band Evolution. Not sure yet, but you'll know because of the title and the thumbnail. And what I'm going to be doing is looking through each release by a band that's studio recorded, so EPs, LPs, albums, and taking an album track, so not a single, an album track, because album tracks are better, they show off albums better than singles do, in my opinion. And this album track that I've chose will represent that period of the band, moving on to another period, and I'm going to make one big playlist of just all these songs that I've chose for you to listen through, and it'll just take you through the history and evolution of the band. In this episode, we're going through my favourite band of all time, Madness, of course, Madness Hat, and going through each album, choosing an album track that represents that album and that period of the band best. If you don't understand, read the playlist description, because I'm better explaining in text than in word. So yeah, without further ado, hopefully this don't run out of memory. I'm going to try to be faster than before. Let's get into it. So the first ever thing and album Madness ever released, I know they had singles, but the first ever album Madness released was One Step Beyond. This is just such an iconic album cover. It's like extremely iconic. And this was their first ever album. It was their debut. They had some singles before, but this is really what kickstarted them. It got to number 2 in the charts. All that doesn't matter, but I'm just saying, just a bit of background. And the song I've chose off this album is Believe Me. Track 4 of side 1, Believe Me. Now, I've got a script here. I can read why I've chose that. Chose Believe Me because it shows off them being young and naive, just having fun making these simple little songs that are charming and innocent, and quite basic, to be frank. So yeah, Believe Me is just a song that's very simple ska tune, very fun, I know it's got sort of a sad meaning, but it's very happy sounding, very innocent, very naive. And it shows off this period of the band very well. They were just starting. They just got with a record label. They were going to make an album that sounded like nothing at the time. And yeah, it really shows off the start of the band very well. More than any of the singles, in my opinion, because the singles are fucking great. Like Nightboat to Cairo, Jesus, and One Step Beyond, but Believe Me shows off the innocent period of the band, their starting point, because it's very simple and very charming. Moving on from here, we have the Work, Rest and Play EP. The song that I've chose is Don't Quote Me on That. Now, why did I choose Don't Quote Me on That? Well, it shows off their new member Chas Smash, and it also shows them experimenting with wackier sounds. Their first album, it's got some wacky songs in there. Tarzan's Nuts for one, Nightboat to Cairo, as I mentioned, Bed and Breakfast Man to an extent. But this point on, it's when they got nutty and brought in a new member, Chas Smash. He was sort of on One Step Beyond, but he wasn't a band member. And this EP brought him in. It's got the sort of hat I've got on, the iconic trilby. And yeah, I just think Don't Quote Me on That shows Chas Smasher singing, it shows his songwriting, it shows the whole band experimenting with a wacky sound. Very good song to show this period of the band. early 1980. And then we have their second album, their best album in my opinion. I just recommend listening to the whole album, but for this case, I chose the song Ernie. Now, Ernie, I didn't clarify, these are not all my favourite songs. Believe Me isn't my favourite song off One Step Beyond. Don't quote me on that's not my favourite song off Work, Rest and Play. Ernie's not my favourite song off Absolutely. But I chose it because it shows off the band getting better at songwriting. Like, it's a lot more complex than the other two songs. I mean, Don't Quote Me on That feels a bit like just a live jam session. And Ernie, Believe Me is just a very basic ska tune. Ernie shows them getting nuttier and finding their sound. This is them finding their sound. This is a very fast, very nutty album. And Ernie's not the fastest song on the album. It's not my favourite song on the album. But it shows off this period, mid to late 1980, Madness very well. Getting faster, getting wackier, getting nuttier. And that is what they're known for. That's why they're nicknamed the Nutty Boys. And yeah, Ernie does show that off very well. And it shows their songwriting skills improving. Also, it's the cover that makes it look discoloured. It's not a terrible copy, it's the cover, it's a crap cover. Just for people out there who are wondering. Alright, their next release, Seven, from 1981, I believe. Pretty certain it's 1981, but it doesn't say. Anyway, Seven. Seven is a great album. Second best Madness album for me. And I chose the song Pac A Mac. Now, why did I choose Pac A Mac? It's not my favourite song on the album, although it's certainly up there. It's one of my favourites. The reason I chose Pac A Mac is because it shows their transition from the nuttier sound with Absolutely and Work, Rest and Play into a darker sound. This album has some dark undertones in it. This period has dark undertones. Their live performances, it got a little bit darker and not really slower. The songs are slower on here in general, but you know, their performances got darker, the album got darker, their singles, you know, Cardiac Arrest is about a man having a heart attack, Grey Day is about suffering with depression. So Pac A Mac shows them going darker, but still having a dancey tone, still having a nutty sound. It shows off the transition period really well from Absolutely into the Rise and Fall. This album as a whole and the song Pac A Mac shows off that very well. Next up, their fourth album, Rise and Fall. One of their best albums, just fucking brilliant album. I don't care if people hate it. I will defend this album. I chose the song Blue Skinned Beast. Oh, why did I choose Blue Skinned Beast? Well, it's one of their most political songs. It's politically and lyrically, it's something the Specials would do. Not really song-wise, it doesn't sound like a Special song, but the lyrics are very Special sounding. And very dark and true to life and depressing. So, Blue Skinned Beast, this is their darkest album. This is 1984, I think. I'm not sure on that. But whatever period this is. 1982? This is 1982. Jesus Christ, I didn't realise. Yeah. Blue Skinned Beast shows off this album very well. This period of basically just going darker and better at songwriting. It's a very good song. Lyrically and tonally, it's just the most depressing, darkest album they've done. Not for the band personally. I know the later Mad Not Mad period is their depression period, but this is where they got dark songs. All the songs on here are dark except Our House. But Blue Skinned Beast shows off that album and that period very well. Next up, my least favourite early Madness album. I would say it's my second least favourite album, but I've labelled it as my least favourite before, so just from this point on, I will say this is my second least favourite Madness album. Norton Folgate's my least favourite, which may shock you all, but whatever. Still, both brilliant albums. I say least favourite, they're still both fucking brilliant, you know. And I chose March of the Gherkins. Now, March of the Gherkins actually is my favourite song of this album, but obviously that's not the reason I chose it. I just think it really does show their quality improving. They've had the dark period with Seven transitioning into dark, Rise and Fall being really dark and experimental. This shows them coming out of the darkness side and going into pop music and new wave. Not entirely. This is again another sort of transition album where they were transitioning from the darker two-tone sounding songs into a more mainstream pop sound. And March of the Gherkins shows it off really well. It is an astonishing piece of work, March of the Gherkins. And it shows this album and this period off very well. Very well indeed. Now, this was 1984, so I must have got it confused with this. Next up, their final album at this point, Mad Not Mad. Now, this album, one of my favourite Madness albums. It was very tense, very depressing. This is probably the band's least favourite album. And I chose the song Coldest Day, which is the final song on the album. Not my favourite, that would be Burning the Boats or Time. But Coldest Day, the reason I chose it, it represents this period full on. It's the album closer, and it doesn't leave you on a happy note. It shows them being demotivated, depressed. Suggs especially. Woody, he was depressed. Suggs was depressed. They were all upset with Madness at this time because they were struggling. Coldest Day also shows it, where they were struggling with the changing landscape of music. You know, music was now going into new wave, going into synth pop. Just more machine computer generated sounds, and Madness were very, very different in that they had saxophones, pianos, guitars, basses and all that, and they were struggling at this period. And Coldest Day shows it very well, shows off that they were struggling, that they were depressed, they were on the verge of collapse. And of course, after the tour for this album, Madness released a single, Waiting for the Ghost Train, which I've not included because it's a single. And that basically ended Madness. Madness split up after that. It was too tense. Woody basically left, and he's on the album, but he only programs drum machines, so he felt like he'd basically left. And Mike Barzo, who was an incredibly important member to the band, left as well after Keep Moving. I thought he left for Keep Moving, but it turns out he is actually on there. Anyway, moving on, we have this album, which a lot of people don't class as Madness, but I do class it as Madness. I mean, it's four of the members. It's the same route they were going down. The Madness. One of my favourite Madness albums again. And I chose the song Oh. Now, Oh, the reason I chose it is because it shows how some of the band dealt with splitting of Madness, like the whole splitting, and trying to make new wave music, but, you know, struggling. Basically, there's only Suggs, Chrissy Boy, Chaz Smash and Lee Thompson on here, and session musicians. Quite good session musicians, you know, Steve Naive and Jerry Dammers are both on here. And Seamus Began, who was a member during Mad Not Mad. But yeah, this album is a very uplifting album in a way, but it is their most depressing period. I know Mad Not Mad was the band's depressing period as a whole, but this is following on from that. Suggs was very depressed at this point, I believe, and this just shows how they dealt with the splitting of the band in general and how they were trying to make new wave music. It's sort of a sequel to Mad Not Mad, but them trying to be more motivated. You know, it's got a lot more colours and things. Alright, this one's not a Madness album, but I'm including it because it's two Madness members and session musicians, I think, so it might as well just be a follow-up to Madness, and that is the Nutty Boys Crunch. I don't know whether the band is Crunch or the Nutty Boys, because everywhere says the band is called Crunch. It's called the Nutty Boys, except Spotify says Crunch, and I've read some sources that say the band is called Crunch. So I think the band is Crunch and the album is Nutty Boys. I'm not sure. But anyway, I know they did It's Okay I'm a Policeman single / EP. I'm not including that, I'm just including the album. And I've chose Complications. Complications is my favourite song on the album. But it shows how these two members, Chrissy Boy and Lee Thompson, who were both in the Madness as well, it shows how they were just paying tribute to Madness. They weren't as depressed as the other band members. They were just paying tribute to Madness as splitting. This says at the bottom, this work is dedicated to the good ship Madness and all who sailed in her. And also, another reason I chose it is it shows these two trying to go back to the nutty roots. This has a lot more sort of absolutely / one step beyond feel to it. It's got a cover for Elise, and the rest of the songs are more ska based. Complications is one of the darker songs on the album, but I chose it because, again, it just shows off them trying to go back to the nutty ska sounding roots while showing tribute to Madness. And it's also a great song, very underrated. Alright, then Madness were done for good. Suggs was releasing solo work. Lee Thompson might have been, I'm not sure. But in 1992, I think they got back together for a tour, and then in 1999, they released a new album, which wasn't released on vinyl. And the rest of the albums I also don't have on vinyl. But this album was wonderful. Well, it's not a wonderful album in my opinion, but the album's called Wonderful. And the song I chose is The Wizard. Potentially my favourite song on the album. Maybe not, I'm not sure. But the reason I chose The Wizard is because it's nuttier, it's faster, it's uplifting as hell, and it just shows that the band got back together and carried on making the great music they were known and loved for, not just the simple new wave stuff that they were trying to do. They were going back to their roots, and they were happy, and it brought an end to the depression. This is where they got back together. They were nutty, they were happy, they were doing the stuff they wanted to do, not really caring about the musical landscape. So that's why I chose that, The Wizard. Next up, I don't actually have this album, but it's called I Chase the Devil, from their cover album called The Dangerman Sessions Volume 1, but just the Dangerman Sessions because they've not done another. I chose I Chase the Devil. I wish I could show you the album, because it shows that a strong point of the band is still doing covers. They were going well doing the covers. They were doing ska music again. And it also shows how they were struggling with Chrissy Boy leaving. I know they just done an album, but for this album, the Dangerman Sessions, Chrissy Boy, I think, left. However, he did join back right after that album released, so it's only for that album. But, you know, it shows their departure of Chrissy Boy and them just doing covers still. Next up, my probably least favourite Madness album, but a lot of people's favourite, The Liberty of Norton Folgate. As I said, I haven't got any of these albums on vinyl. I chose the title track, The Liberty of Norton Folgate, because even though it's probably not the best song on the album, it's 10 minutes long, the longest Madness song to my knowledge, and it's such a grand musical masterpiece that I think the band are most proud of that song. It's like an adventure. It's 10 minutes. It goes through lots of sections. And Lee Thompson, I think, says it's his most proud Madness song. If he was to play one Madness song to someone, he would play The Liberty of Norton Folgate. And I just think 2009, they'd split up, they'd released an album, and then they'd released an album of just covers. This song really shows that they aren't fucking about. They may be getting older, they may have had a split up, they may have done an album of just covers, but Liberty of Norton Folgate shows that they are still insanely good at writing songs, still amazing songwriters, still able to go in happier, darker places. You know, the song's everywhere, it's 10 minutes long. Yeah, that's why I chose that. Next up, my favourite Modern Madness album, Wee Wee CC Ya Ya Da Da. I chose the song Leon. It is my favourite song on the album, again, but that's not the reason I chose it. And I chose this song because it shows them delving back into the nutty sound. Like, this album is the nuttiest Madness album in ages, in my opinion. It's sort of similar to the to Seven, the sound of it. And yeah, it shows them going back to the nutty sound as a whole, but being larger than ever, even without Bedders. Bedders isn't on this album. And it's still a fucking brilliant song, Leon. It's really grand. Not massively long, but it goes back to the nutty days while still showing that they're great songwriters even today. And then, the final song on this playlist. I know they've released Bullingdon Boys, but that's just a single. I'm not going to choose a song off that yet, you know, maybe when they release the next album. But the first Madness album I ever heard, Can't Touch Us Now. I chose the song Don't Leave the Past Behind You, and the reason I chose this song is because it shows how the band are coping with the departure of Chas Smash. Chas Smash, after Wee Wee and touring for it, he left the band, and this album shows them struggling. Suggs is leading the band, but you know, it's not depressing or anything. And a lot of the songs on here, a lot of people hate, like Pam the Hawk, Blackbird. But I chose Don't Leave a Past Behind You because it's uplifting and it shows they're going to have a bright future. It's a good one to leave the playlist on. It's a good one relating to this period of the band struggling with Chas Smash but carrying on, making great music. And it leaves to a good future. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm glad I could get through it. If you want, comment below what you choose, an album track from each release, and maybe I'll agree with you more than myself. I don't know, I thought a long time about this, thought about it basically all last night, which sounds sad, but I've got nothing to do. Yeah, so, thank you for watching this video, hope you enjoyed it. Leave your list in the comments below. Look in the description, there's a playlist of this song, in these songs in this order. You can listen through it. If you're not a fan of Madness and you're just listening to this and you want to get into them, I would really recommend listening to this playlist that I'm going to make of all these songs, because it'll take you through each period of Madness. It'll show you their nuttier days, their darker days, their comeback, what they were doing when they split up, their covers, their grand masterpiece, Norton Folgate. It shows you everything. So, thank you for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay epic.